The cargo bay of Valara 7 station hummed with the usual sounds of machinery and distant conversations. Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked the securing straps on another container. It was just another day, nothing special. He had been working on this station for almost 2 years now, and the routine had become second nature to him. Load cargo, check the safety locks, move to the next container, repeat. Simple work for simple pay. The station itself was massive, floating in orbit around a gas giant that filled the viewports with swirls of orange and red. Aliens from dozens of species walked through the corridors every day. Some were tall and thin, others were short and covered in fur. Some had 4 arms, others had no arms at all. Jake had gotten used to seeing them. Humans were still new to the galactic community, and most aliens treated them with curiosity or mild amusement. Some thought humans were fragile. Others thought they were reckless. Jake didn't care much either way. He just wanted to do his job and make enough money to send home to his sister. He moved to the next section of the cargo bay, where the larger containers were stored. These ones were massive, each the size of a small house suspended by thick cables and magnetic clamps. The safety protocols for these containers were strict, triple redundancy on every system. Jake had checked them himself just yesterday. A loud grinding sound made him stop. He looked up, frowning. That wasn't normal. The sound came again, louder this time, followed by a sharp crack. One of the massive containers jerked suddenly, swinging on its cables. The magnetic clamps sparked and died. Jake's heart jumped into his throat. The container was coming loose. He grabbed his communicator and shouted into it. "Cargo bay emergency! Container 7 is breaking free." His voice echoed in the massive space. Other workers started running, shouting warnings to each other. Alarms began to wail throughout the bay. The container swung again, its cables groaning under the strain. It was going to fall. Jake could see it happening in slow motion. The remaining cables were fraying, sparking, about to snap. When that container fell, it would crush everything beneath it. That's when he saw her, a small figure, pale blue skin, standing directly in the path of the falling cargo. A child. An alien child, but still just a child. She was frozen, staring up at the massive container with wide, terrified eyes. Her small hands were clutched together and she wasn't moving. She was too scared to run. Jake didn't think. There wasn't time to think. His body moved before his brain caught up. He sprinted across the cargo bay floor, his boots pounding against the metal grating. The cables snapped with a sound like thunder. The container began its fall. He reached the child and threw himself forward, wrapping his arms around her small body and pulling her against his chest. He twisted in midair, putting his back toward the falling container. His body covered hers completely. He could feel her trembling against him. The world exploded in pain and darkness. The container hit the ground with a deafening crash and debris rained down on Jake's back. Something heavy struck his shoulder, then his leg. He felt his ribs crack. The air was driven from his lungs. Metal scraped against metal, and smaller pieces of cargo bounced and scattered across the bay floor. Jake kept his arms locked around the child. He could feel her heartbeat against his chest, fast and frightened but steady. She was alive. That was all that mattered. The pain was incredible, spreading through his entire body like fire, but he didn't let go. More debris fell, striking his back and legs. He gritted his teeth and held on. Finally, the crashing stopped. The cargo bay fell silent except for the wailing alarms and distant shouts. Jake couldn't move. His body felt wrong, broken in ways he couldn't identify. His vision was starting to blur at the edges. But the child beneath him was still breathing. He could feel it. "Are you okay?" he managed to whisper. His voice came out rough and weak. The child didn't answer, but he felt her nod against his chest. Small hands clutched at his shirt. She was terrified but unhurt. Good. That was good. People were running toward them now. He could hear their voices, urgent and panicked. Someone was shouting orders. Heavy footsteps approached. Hands touched his back, gentle but urgent. "Don't move him," someone yelled. "Get medical here now." "There's a child under him," another voice said. "Careful, careful." Jake felt the weight on his back being lifted away piece by piece. The debris was being removed. Cool air touched his skin where his shirt had been torn. The pain intensified as the pressure changed, and he couldn't hold back a groan. "Sir, can you hear me?" A voice spoke directly into his ear. "Medical personnel, probably. We're going to get you out of here." "Just hold on." "The kid," Jake whispered. "Is she okay?" "We're checking her now. Just stay still." Jake felt the child being gently pulled from his arms. He wanted to hold on, to make sure she was really safe, but his strength was gone. His arms fell to the ground, useless. The darkness at the edges of his vision was spreading, closing in. "She's fine," someone shouted. "Not a scratch on her. The human took all the impact. Get him on the stretcher now." "He's going into shock." Jake felt himself being lifted. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through his body, and he couldn't stop the cry that escaped his lips. The ceiling of the cargo bay slid past above him as they carried him away. He caught a glimpse of the child being held by someone tall and elegant, with the same pale blue skin. An adult, probably her mother. The woman's face was a mixture of shock and something else Jake couldn't identify. Then the darkness took him, and he knew nothing more. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments. Beeping machines. Soft voices speaking in languages he didn't understand. The smell of antiseptic. Pain, constant and throbbing, but somehow distant, as if his body belonged to someone else. Jake opened his eyes slowly. The light was dim, comfortable. He was in a medical room, that much was clear. White walls, medical equipment surrounding his bed, monitors displaying information he couldn't read. His body felt heavy and strange, wrapped in something that hummed softly against his skin. Regenerative bandages, he realized. The station had alien medical technology far beyond what Earth could produce. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain flared through his chest and shoulder. He gasped and fell still. "Don't move." The voice was soft but firm, speaking perfect English with a slight musical accent. Jake turned his head carefully and saw her. She was tall, easily over 6 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly in the medical room's light. Her features were elegant and angular, with large eyes that were a deeper blue than her skin. Her hair was long and white, pulled back from her face. She wore a uniform that looked military, dark with silver markings he didn't recognize. She was beautiful in a way that was completely alien and yet somehow familiar. Beside her, holding her hand, was the child. The one Jake had saved. She looked up at him with those same large blue eyes, and a small smile crossed her face. "You saved my daughter," the woman said. Her voice carried weight, authority, but also something warmer. "You threw yourself on top of her. You could have died." Jake's throat was dry. He swallowed and managed to speak. "Is she okay?" "She doesn't have a single injury," the woman said. "You took everything. Broken ribs, fractured shoulder, damaged leg, internal bleeding. The doctor said you're lucky to be alive." "Then it was worth it," Jake said. He meant it. The woman stared at him for a long moment. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were intense. The child tugged on her hand and whispered something in a language Jake didn't know. The woman nodded and looked back at Jake. "My name is Lyra Keston," she said. "This is my daughter, Nira. We are Velkari. Do you understand what you have done?" Jake shook his head slightly. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Lyra said firmly. "You did what very few would do. You sacrificed yourself for a child of another species, a child you didn't know. In my culture, this creates a debt that can never be repaid with mere words or currency." "You don't owe me anything," Jake said. "I'm just glad she's safe." Lyra's expression shifted, becoming more intense. She straightened, and when she spoke, her voice carried through the room like a declaration. "I am Lyra Keston, officer of the Velkari Defense Fleet. Before these witnesses, I declare that this human has saved the life of my only child. By the ancient laws of my people, I pledge myself to him. From this moment forward, the human is mine. I will protect him, serve him, and honor him for as long as I draw breath. This debt is sacred and binding." Jake stared at her, confused and suddenly uncomfortable. "What? No, you don't have to do that." "I don't want anyone pledging themselves to me. I just wanted to help." But Lyra wasn't looking at him anymore. She was looking at the medical staff who had stopped their work to stare. At the other patients in nearby beds who had heard her declaration. Word would spread, Jake realized with growing unease. Word would spread fast. "The human is mine," Lyra repeated, quieter this time but no less firm. She looked down at Jake with those intense blue eyes. "And nothing will change that." Jake spent 3 days in the medical bay before the doctors cleared him to return to his quarters. His body still ached, but the alien medical technology had worked wonders. Bones that should have taken months to heal were already knitting back together. The internal bleeding had stopped. The bruises covering his body had faded from deep purple to pale yellow. He could walk without assistance, though his shoulder still twinged when he moved it wrong. What hadn't improved was his situation with Lyra. She had been there every single day. Every time he woke up, she was sitting in the chair beside his bed. When he ate, she watched to make sure he finished his meals. When the doctors came to check on him, she questioned them thoroughly about his progress. She spoke to the medical staff with the authority of someone used to being obeyed, and they responded accordingly. Little Nira came with her mother every day too. The child had warmed to Jake immediately, bringing him small gifts and drawings. She would sit on the edge of his bed and tell him stories in halting English, her vocabulary limited but her enthusiasm boundless. Jake found himself looking forward to her visits. The child was sweet and innocent, and seeing her smile made the pain worth it, but Lyra was a different matter entirely. "You need to stop this," Jake said on the morning they released him. He was sitting on the edge of the medical bed, fully dressed in clean clothes Lyra had somehow acquired for him. "I appreciate everything you've done, but I don't need a bodyguard or a servant or whatever you think this is." Lyra stood near the door, her military uniform crisp and perfect. "You do not understand. This is not a choice. I have declared the life debt." "It is binding. Binding to who?" Jake asked, frustrated. "I didn't agree to anything. I don't want you to feel like you owe me. Can't we just be friends and call it even?" "Friends," Lyra repeated the word as if testing it. "Among my people, friendship is earned over years. What exists between us now is deeper than friendship. You gave yourself to save my daughter. That act demands recognition. I was just doing the right thing." "Exactly," Lyra said. "And that is why you don't understand how rare you are. Most species would have calculated the risk. They would have called for help and waited. You didn't think. You simply acted. That kind of instinct is precious." Jake rubbed his face with his good hand. "Look, I have a job to get back to. My supervisor is probably wondering where I am. I need to return to my normal life." "Your supervisor has been informed," Lyra said calmly. "You are on medical leave for 2 more weeks. Paid leave, I made certain of that. And when you return to work, I will accompany you." "What? No, absolutely not. You can't just follow me around everywhere." "I can and I will," Lyra said. There was no anger in her voice, just absolute certainty. "The human is mine. I protect what is mine." Jake wanted to argue more, but he could see it would be pointless. The woman was like a wall, immovable. He sighed and stood up, testing his weight on his injured leg. It held, though it ached. "Fine, whatever. Can we at least go to my quarters?" "I want to sleep in my own bed." "Of course," Lyra said. She gestured to Nira, who had been playing with a small electronic toy in the corner. "Come, little one. We're taking Jake home." The walk through the station was strange. Jake had always been just another face in the crowd, one more human among thousands of aliens. But now people stopped and stared. Whispers followed them. He caught fragments of conversations in dozens of languages. Some he understood, most he didn't. "That's the human," someone said in English. "The one who saved the Velkari child." "I heard she claimed him," another voice whispered. "Said he belongs to her now." "Belongs to her? What does that mean?" Jake kept his eyes forward and walked faster despite the pain. Lyra matched his pace effortlessly, her long legs covering the distance easily. Nira skipped along between them, holding both their hands, completely oblivious to the attention. His quarters were small, but comfortable. One main room with a bed, a small kitchen area, and a bathroom. Nothing fancy, but it was his space. Jake had never been so happy to see it. He walked in and sat down on his bed with a relieved sigh. Lyra entered after him, looking around with interest. Nira immediately began exploring, examining Jake's few possessions with curiosity. "Your dwelling is modest," Lyra observed. "It's what I can afford on a cargo handler's salary," Jake said. "Not all of us are fleet officers." "I meant no criticism," Lyra said. "It's practical, efficient, very human from what I've observed of your species." Jake watched as she moved to his small kitchen area and began examining his food supplies. "What are you doing?" "Checking your nutrition," she said without looking back. "The doctors said you need proper meals for recovery. This processed food will not suffice. I'll need to acquire better supplies. I can feed myself." "I'm certain you can," Lyra said, "but you will recover faster with proper care." Before Jake could argue, there was a chime at his door. He frowned. He rarely got visitors. "Come in," he called. The door slid open and a small crowd entered. Station security officers, a few of Jake's co-workers, and his supervisor, a gruff man named Pete who ran the cargo bay operations. Pete was human, one of the few in management positions, and he looked uncomfortable. Morrison, Pete said, nodding to him. Good to see you up and about. Hell of a thing you did. Just did my job, Jake said. Saving kids isn't in your job description, Pete said with a slight smile. But I'm glad you're okay. The company wanted me to check on you. You've got full medical coverage for this, and like the lady said, 2 weeks paid leave. Take the time you need. Thanks, Pete. One of the security officers stepped forward, a tall alien with green-scaled skin. We've completed our investigation into the incident. The container failure was due to faulty maintenance by an outside contractor. Criminal charges are being filed. The station authority wanted us to personally thank you for your actions. You prevented a tragedy. Jake nodded awkwardly. Just glad everyone's okay. Everyone's talking about what you did, one of his co-workers said, a young human woman named Lisa. It's all over the station network. You're famous. I don't want to be famous, Jake muttered. Too late for that, Lisa said with a grin. Then she noticed Lyra and her expression became curious. Is this the child's mother? The one who made the declaration? Lyra stepped forward, placing herself slightly in front of Jake. The movement was subtle but protective. I am Lyra Keston. Yes, I made the declaration. The human saved my daughter's life. He is under my protection now. An awkward silence filled the room. The security officers exchanged glances. Pete looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Lisa's grin had faded into confusion. Under your protection? Lisa asked carefully. What does that mean exactly? It means what it says, Lyra replied. Her tone was polite but firm. Jake Morrison has earned a life debt from me and my family. In Velkari culture, this is the highest honor. I am bound to him now. Bound, Pete repeated. He looked at Jake. Morrison, is this something you want? Jake opened his mouth to say no, to explain that this was all a misunderstanding. But Nira chose that moment to climb onto his bed and snuggle against his side. She looked up at him with those big blue eyes and smiled. Jake is nice, she said in her careful English. He saved me. I love Jake. The words hit Jake harder than the falling cargo had. This child, this innocent little girl, trusted him completely, and her mother, despite how overwhelming she was being, genuinely believed she was doing the right thing. They weren't trying to trap him or control him. They were trying to honor him in the only way they knew how. Jake sighed. It's fine, he said quietly. We're working through some cultural differences, but it's fine. Pete didn't look convinced, but he nodded. All right. Well, if you need anything, let me know. The company's got your back on this one. The visitors left one by one, offering their congratulations and well wishes. When the door finally closed behind them, Jake let his head fall back against the wall. This is insane, he muttered. This is honor, Lyra corrected. She sat down in the only chair in the room, her posture perfect. I know human culture is different from ours. I've studied your species since you joined the Galactic community. You value independence, personal choice. I understand this makes you uncomfortable. Then why won't you just let it go? Because I cannot, Lyra said simply. My daughter is everything to me. My husband died in battle 3 years ago. Nira is all I have left of him. When I saw her standing in that cargo bay, when I saw that container falling, I felt my world ending. And then you appeared. A stranger, someone we'd never met, and you threw yourself into death's path for her. How can I not honor that? How can I not dedicate myself to ensuring you never regret that choice? Jake looked at her and saw the raw emotion in her eyes. This wasn't about cultural obligation. This was about a mother's love and gratitude. He couldn't be angry at that, no matter how uncomfortable it made him. I don't regret it, he said softly. I would do it again. I know, Lyra said. That is why the human is mine. The next week passed in a strange rhythm that Jake gradually adjusted to. True to her word, Lyra stayed close. She had moved into the quarters next to his, rooms that had been vacant but were somehow now assigned to her. Jake suspected she had pulled strings with station management. When he asked her about it, she simply said it was necessary for his protection, and left it at that. Nira became a constant presence in his life too. The child would visit every morning before Lyra took her to the station's education center. She would bring Jake drawings she'd made, usually of him standing heroically while deflecting cargo with his bare hands. The images were adorable in their inaccuracy. Jake kept every single one. Slowly, Jake began to learn about the Velkari. Lyra would tell him stories while she prepared meals in his kitchen. The Velkari were an old species, she explained, with traditions stretching back thousands of years. They valued honor above all else. Family was sacred. A debt to someone who saved a family member's life was considered unbreakable. In the old days, Lyra said one evening while cooking something that smelled surprisingly good, a warrior who saved another's child would be adopted into the family. They would become blood relatives through ceremony. The practice has faded, but the principle remains. You are family now, whether you accept it or not. Jake, sitting at his small table with his leg elevated, considered this. What happened to your husband? He asked carefully. You mentioned he died in battle. Lyra's hands paused in their work. When she spoke, her voice was softer. His name was Kalen. He was a ship captain, one of the finest in the fleet. 3 years ago, his ship was ambushed by pirates in the outer territories. He held them off long enough for his crew to escape, but he didn't make it out. They gave him a hero's memorial. It was beautiful and completely meaningless because he was gone. I'm sorry, Jake said. Nira was only 3 years old. She barely remembers him now. I've raised her alone since then, balancing my duties and her care. It hasn't been easy. Lyra resumed cooking, her movements precise. When I thought I might lose her too, when I saw that cargo falling, something broke inside me. And then you fixed it. You gave me back my reason for living. Jake didn't know what to say to that. The weight of her words settled over him. This wasn't just about cultural obligation. This was about grief and hope and a mother's desperate gratitude. I'm not a hero, he finally said. I'm just a guy who did what felt right. That's what makes it heroic, Lyra replied. She brought a plate to the table and set it in front of him. The food was alien but well prepared, colorful vegetables and protein that tasted similar to chicken. Heroes don't think about glory. They just act. Your species has that quality more than most. The galaxy is still learning what humans are capable of. Jake ate in silence, thinking about her words. He had never considered himself special. Earth had joined the galactic community only 15 years ago. Humans were the newcomers, the ones still figuring out their place among the stars. Most aliens saw them as weak or primitive, but Lyra saw something different. The comfortable routine was shattered 3 days later when Jake received a message on his personal communicator. The text was simple and direct. We know about the Velkari's claim on you. You're worth something now, human. Watch your back. There was no signature, no identification code. Just a threat hanging in digital space. Jake stared at the message, his stomach tightening. He showed it to Lyra when she arrived moments later. Her expression darkened immediately. Pirates, she said, her voice cold. The Talrith clan, most likely. They operate in this sector and have been growing bolder. They must have heard about you. Why would pirates care about me? Jake asked. I'm nobody. You're somebody to me, Lyra said. I'm a ranking officer in the Velkari Defense Fleet. That makes you a potential target for leverage or ransom. They're testing the waters, seeing if you're vulnerable. So what do? We increase security, Lyra said immediately. She was already working her own communicator, sending messages in rapid succession. I'll contact station security and my own people. You won't go anywhere alone. I should have anticipated this. You can't watch me every second of every day, Jake protested. Watch me, Lyra said grimly. Station security increased their patrols around Jake's quarters. Lyra began carrying a weapon openly, a sleek energy pistol that marked her as military. Other Velkari officers appeared, colleagues of Lyra's who nodded respectfully to Jake and positioned themselves at strategic points throughout the station. The casual atmosphere Jake had enjoyed evaporated, replaced by watchful tension. Nira sensed the change in mood. She became quieter, more clingy. She would sit close to Jake during her visits and ask if everything was okay. Jake always told her yes, but he could tell she didn't quite believe him. A week after the threatening message, Jake was walking through one of the station's market districts with Lyra close beside him. He had insisted on getting out of his quarters, cabin fever getting the better of him. The market was crowded with aliens of every species, buying food and goods from hundreds of vendors. The air smelled of exotic spices and ozone. They were examining a fruit vendor's display when Jake noticed them. 3 figures, different species, but all carrying themselves the same way. Rough clothing, visible weapons, and eyes that tracked Jake's every movement. pirates, or at least criminals. His military friends back on Earth would have called them trouble looking for a place to happen. Lyra, he said quietly. 3 o'clock. Are those guys following us? Lyra glanced casually in that direction. Her expression didn't change, but her hand moved closer to her weapon. Yes, they're Talrith. I recognize the markings on the tall one's jacket. What do they want? To intimidate us. To gather information. Maybe to attempt something if they think they can get away with it. Lyra's voice was calm, but Jake could hear the steel underneath. Stay close to me. They continued walking, pretending not to notice their followers. But the pirates were getting bolder. They were closing the distance, weaving through the crowd. Jake's heart rate picked up. He wasn't a fighter. He'd been in a few scuffles back on Earth, but nothing serious. These were professionals. The crowd thinned as they entered a less busy corridor. The pirates made their move. They spread out, blocking the path ahead and behind. The tall one, a reptilian alien with scarred scales, stepped forward. The human who thinks he's special, the pirate said in accented English. Word is you've got a Velkari guardian angel now. That must feel nice. We have no business with you, Lyra said, stepping slightly in front of Jake. Leave now and there won't be trouble. The pirate laughed. We're not here for trouble, officer. Just wanted to deliver a message. The humans made quite a splash. Some people are very interested in him. Would be a shame if something happened to such a valuable person. Touch him and you'll start a war, Lyra said coldly. Who said anything about touching? The pirate grinned, showing pointed teeth. We're just making conversation. But accidents happen on stations like this. Cargo accidents, airlock malfunctions, food poisoning. So many ways a fragile human could get hurt. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. He'd had enough of being treated like a damsel in distress. He stepped around Lyra before she could stop him. Listen carefully, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I'm not interested in your games. I'm not interested in being anyone's target. I just want to live my life. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away right now and we're going to forget this conversation happened. The pirate's grin widened. Or what, little human? You going to stop us? No, Jake said. But she will. And trust me, you don't want that. For a moment the corridor was silent except for the distant sounds of the market. The pirate looked at Lyra, really looked at her, and something in her expression made him hesitate. Lyra's hand was on her weapon and her eyes promised violence. The pirate stepped back. This isn't over, he said. The Talrith don't forget. Neither do the Velkari, Lyra replied. The pirates retreated, melting back into the crowd. Jake let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His hands were shaking slightly. Lyra grabbed his arm, not roughly but firmly. We're leaving. Now. They returned to Jake's quarters at a fast pace. Once inside, Lyra immediately contacted station security and filed a report. Then she called her own people, speaking rapidly in her native language. Jake sat on his bed, feeling the adrenaline drain away. When Lyra finished her calls, she turned to him. That was foolish, she said. You should have let me handle it. I'm tired of being protected, Jake said. I'm tired of feeling helpless. You're not helpless. You're vulnerable. There's a difference. Lyra sat down next to him and for the first time she looked tired. These pirates are dangerous, Jake. The Talrith clan has been operating for decades. They have no honor, no mercy. If they decide you're valuable enough to take, they will try. Then what do? We prepare, Lyra said. And we hope they're not stupid enough to actually try something. Because if they take you, I will burn their entire organization to the ground to get you back. The intensity in her voice made Jake believe her completely. He looked at this alien woman who had inserted herself into his life, who had declared him hers, who was now prepared to go to war for him. The attack came 2 nights later, during a scheduled power maintenance cycle. Large stations like Valeris 7 needed periodic system checks, which meant certain sectors would experience temporary power reductions. It was routine, happened every month, and everyone on the station knew the schedule. That's what made it the perfect time to strike. Jake was in his quarters when the lights dimmed to emergency levels. The sudden change from bright to red emergency lighting made him look up from the book he'd been reading on his tablet. This wasn't normal. The power reduction should have been gradual, controlled. This felt like a failure. He stood up and walked to his door, intending to check with Lyra in the next room. Before he could activate the door controls, he heard sounds in the corridor. Not the usual foot traffic. These were purposeful, coordinated movements. Multiple sets of footsteps. Jake's instincts screamed danger. He backed away from the door just as it exploded inward. The locking mechanism sparked and died, overridden by some kind of electronic device. 3 figures rushed in, their features hidden behind helmets and tactical gear. Pirates. Had to be. Jake tried to run for the emergency communicator on the wall, but he wasn't fast enough. One of the intruders fired some kind of stun weapon. Blue energy crackled through the air and hit Jake in the chest. His muscles locked up and he fell to the floor, unable to move or cry out. His body felt like it was being electrocuted, every nerve firing at once. Rough hands grabbed him, lifted him. Through his blurred vision, Jake could see more figures in the corridor. Station security officers lay unconscious on the floor. The pirates had hit fast and hard, taking out anyone who might raise an alarm. They carried Jake through the corridors at a run. His body was still paralyzed, but his mind was fully aware. He tried to remember the route they were taking, but the emergency lighting made everything look the same. Left turn, right turn down a maintenance shaft. They were taking service passages, avoiding the main corridors where people might see them. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, they reached a docking bay. A small ship waited there, engines already hot. They threw Jake roughly onto the deck and he felt the vibration as the ship lifted off. Through the open cargo door, he caught a glimpse of the station falling away before someone slammed a button and the door sealed shut. The paralysis began to wear off slowly. Jake could move his fingers, then his hands. Feeling returned to his limbs in painful tingles. He pushed himself up to a sitting position, his chest aching where the stun blast had hit him. One of the pirates yanked off his helmet, revealing the scarred reptilian face from the market encounter. "Welcome aboard, human. Hope you enjoyed your last look at the station because you won't be seeing it again." Jake's throat was dry, but he managed to speak. "Lyra will come for me," the pirate laughed.
"Your Valkyrie protector?"
"She's probably still sleeping off the sedative gas we pumped into her quarters. By the time she wakes up, we'll be 3 jumps away and completely untraceable." Fear and anger warred in Jake's chest. They'd taken out Lyra. Was she okay? Was Nira safe? His hands clenched into fists, useless against armed pirates but needing to do something. "What do you want with me?" Jake asked. "Leverage, maybe ransom, maybe we just sell you to the highest bidder," the pirate said, leaning against the ship's bulkhead. "A human claimed by a Valkyrie officer? That's valuable. The Valkyrie pay well to avoid embarrassment, and you've become something of a celebrity. Win-win for us." They locked Jake in a small cargo hold once the ship reached its destination. The facility was old, an abandoned mining operation in an asteroid field. The corridors were dark and smelled of rust and recycled air. They threw him into a cell that had probably once been equipment storage and sealed the door. Jake sat in the darkness, testing his body. Nothing was broken. The stun weapon had left him sore, but he was intact. That was something. He felt along the walls, looking for any weakness, any way out. The walls were solid metal. The door was sealed from the outside. He was trapped. Hours passed. Maybe days, he couldn't tell in the unchanging darkness. They brought him water and bland food twice, delivered through a slot in the door. He forced himself to eat and drink, knowing he'd need his strength. During the 3rd or 4th meal, he heard voices outside his cell. Different pirates arguing about something. Jake pressed his ear to the door and listened. "The Valkyrie officer is tearing the station apart looking for him," one voice said. "She's got half the Galactic fleet asking questions." "Let her ask," another voice replied. "She'll never find this place. It's been off the charts for 20 years. She's not asking nicely. Word is she threatened to dismantle the station piece by piece if they didn't give her answers. She's gone completely feral. One Valkyrie doesn't scare me. She's not alone anymore. She's called in favors. There's a fleet forming. They're searching every ship that leaves the sector." Jake felt hope surge in his chest. Lyra was coming. She was actually coming for him. He'd half believed the pirates when they said she'd been taken out, but she was awake and hunting. The pirates outside his cell moved away, still arguing. Jake sat back down, a small smile on his face despite everything. He'd told them Lyra would come. He'd warned them. 2 more meals came and went. Then the pirates returned, and this time they weren't gentle. They dragged Jake out of the cell and brought him to what looked like a command center. Screens showed various views of space and the asteroid field. The scarred reptilian leader was there, along with several others. "Your protector is causing problems," the leader said without preamble. Time to send her a message. Tell us everything you know about Velkari fleet movements and security protocols. I don't know anything about that, Jake said honestly. I'm a cargo handler. I load boxes. That's it. Don't play stupid, human. The Velkari officer talks to you. She must have told you things. She talks to me about her daughter and cooking and old Velkari stories, Jake said. She doesn't discuss military secrets with random cargo workers. The pirate leader stepped close, his breath hot and foul. You're lying. You're trying to protect her. That's sweet, but it won't help you. He nodded to one of his crew. Hurt him. Not too much, we need him conscious for the recording, but enough that the Velkari knows we're serious. The blow caught Jake in the stomach, driving the air from his lungs. He doubled over, gasping. Another hit to his back sent him to his knees. Pain exploded through his recently healed ribs. Stop, Jake wheezed. I told you I don't know anything. Then you're not very useful to us, the leader said. Maybe we should just space you and cut our losses. If you kill me, Lyra won't stop until every one of you is dead, Jake said through gritted teeth. She made a life debt declaration. That means something to the Velkari. You think she's bad now? You haven't seen anything yet. The pirate leader stared at him, and for the first time Jake saw uncertainty in those alien eyes. You believe that? You actually believe she'll come for you? I know she will, Jake said. He pushed himself back up to his feet, swaying but standing. His body hurt, but he kept his voice steady. Lyra Keston is a Velkari warrior. She doesn't break promises. She doesn't give up. And she doesn't lose. You made a mistake taking me. You should have left well enough alone. Big words from a prisoner, the pirate said, but there was less confidence in his voice now. Not big words, Jake said. Just the truth. And the truth is you're all dead already. You just don't know it yet. The pirate leader raised his hand to strike Jake himself, but before he could, alarms started blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the command center. Pirates ran to the screens, their voices rising in panic. Ships incoming. Multiple contacts. It's a Velkari assault group. How did they find us? Jake couldn't help the grim smile that crossed his face. I told you, he said. She's coming. The facility shook as weapons fire struck the exterior. On the screens, Jake could see sleek Velkari warships moving through the asteroid field with deadly precision. They were taking out defensive positions one by one, their formation perfect and coordinated. Lock down all access points, the pirate leader shouted. Prepare for boarding! Get the human to the escape shuttle. Two pirates grabbed Jake, but before they could move him, a new sound cut through the chaos. A breach. The distinctive hiss-clang of a forced entry. The pirates spun toward the corridor entrance, raising weapons. Lyra came through the door like a force of nature. She moved faster than Jake had ever seen her move, her body a blur of precise violence. Her energy pistol fired in controlled bursts, dropping pirates before they could react. One tried to rush her with a blade. She disarmed him with a move so quick Jake barely saw it, then used his own weapon to take out two more attackers. Behind her, more Velkari soldiers poured in, their own weapons adding to the carnage. The pirates stood no chance. They'd been outmaneuvered and outgunned. In less than a minute, the command center was secure, dead and unconscious pirates littering the floor. Lyra's eyes found Jake across the room. For a moment, everything else seemed to stop. She crossed the distance in 3 long strides and grabbed his face with both hands, checking him for injuries. Her eyes were fierce, protective, and relieved all at once. Are you hurt? She demanded. I'm okay, Jake said. Bruised, but okay. You came. The journey back to Velaris 7 took 3 days. Jake spent most of that time in the medical bay of Lyra's ship, being checked and rechecked by concerned Velkari doctors. His injuries were minor, mostly bruising and strained muscles. The doctors marveled at his resilience. For such a supposedly fragile species, they said, humans could take remarkable punishment. Lyra rarely left his side during those 3 days. She sat in the medical bay, working on reports and coordinating with station authorities. Nira was there too, having been brought aboard for safety. The child had cried when she first saw Jake, throwing her small arms around him and refusing to let go for almost an hour. Jake held her and promised he was okay, that everything would be fine now. On the second day, after Nira had finally fallen asleep in a nearby chair, Jake and Lyra talked properly for the first time since the rescue. How did you find me? Jake asked. The pirates said their base was untraceable. Lyra looked up from her datapad, a slight smile on her face. Nira found you, actually. What? How? Do you remember the small communicator you gave her? The toy one you said she could play with? Jake nodded. He'd given Nira one of his old comm units, disabled but still functional as a play item. She'd been delighted with it. It wasn't entirely disabled, Lyra said. There was still a tracking chip active. You probably didn't know. Most humans don't check thoroughly. When the pirates took you, I checked everything. Your quarters, your belongings, anything that might give me a lead. Nira showed me the communicator and said you'd been wearing one just like it. I checked, and you had. The tracking signal was faint, but it was there. We followed it across 3 star systems to that asteroid field. That's impossible, Jake said. Those things have a range of maybe a few kilometers. Normally, yes. But when I want to find something badly enough, I make the impossible work. I had our best technicians boost the signal, triangulate the position, and track every possible route. It took 18 hours of constant work, but we found you. Jake looked at Lyra with new appreciation. The amount of effort, the resources, the sheer determination required to pull that off was staggering. You could have started a war doing that. Crossing into unclaimed territories, attacking a pirate base. The Galactic Council doesn't look kindly on that sort of thing. I don't care what the Council thinks, Lyra said flatly. They took you. That was enough. If I'd had to burn every ship in the sector to find you, I would have. Why? Jake asked, voicing the question that had been growing in his mind for weeks. I know about the life debt and your culture, but this goes beyond that. You could have honored the debt in other ways. Why risk so much for one human? Lyra was quiet for a long moment. She set down her datapad and looked at Jake directly. Because somewhere between the moment you saved my daughter and now, you became important to me. Not just as an obligation or a debt, but as someone I care about. When they took you, when I woke up and found you gone, I felt the same terror I felt watching that cargo fall. The same certainty that I was losing something irreplaceable. Jake's heart hammered in his chest. Lyra, I know human customs are different, she continued. I know you value choice and freedom. If you want me to step back, to honor the debt from a distance, I will. But I need you to know the truth. When I said the human is mine, I meant it in every way possible. You're under my protection, yes. But you're also in my heart. Both mine and Nira's. Jake looked across the medical bay at the sleeping child, then back at Lyra. This warrior, this fierce protector, this woman who had turned his entire life upside down. When had she stopped being an overwhelming force and started being someone he couldn't imagine living without? I don't want you to step back, he said quietly. I thought I did at first. I thought I wanted my simple life back. But that life feels empty now. You and Nira, you've given me something I didn't know I was missing. Purpose, family. I know we're different species, different cultures, but maybe that doesn't matter as much as what we feel. Lyra's expression softened in a way Jake had never seen before. What do you feel, Jake Morrison? I feel like I'm home when you're around, Jake said. I feel like I found something worth protecting, something worth fighting for. If you're mine, Lyra, then I'm yours too, completely. The kiss was tentative at first, careful. Human lips and Velkari lips were different, but the emotion behind it was universal. When they pulled apart, Lyra's eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. The Galactic community will talk, she said. Humans and Velkari have never bonded like this before. Let them talk, Jake said. I'm getting used to being famous. They returned to Valaris 7 to find the station in an uproar. News of Jake's kidnapping and dramatic rescue had spread throughout the Galactic network. The story had everything. Heroic sacrifice, a declaration of devotion, dangerous pirates, and a daring rescue. Species that had never paid attention to humans before were suddenly very interested. Station authorities held a formal inquiry into the incident. The Talrith clan's attack on the station was declared an act of terrorism. The surviving pirates would face justice. The abandoned mining facility had been seized, and investigation teams were going through it piece by piece. 3 other kidnapping victims had been found there, held for ransom. Jake's rescue had freed them too. A week after his return, station management organized a ceremony. They wanted to formally recognize Jake's heroism and Lyra's successful rescue operation. Jake tried to decline, but Lyra convinced him it was important. The Galactic community needed to see that humans were valuable, that they could be heroes too. The ceremony was held in the station's main plaza, a huge open area that could hold thousands. Representatives from dozens of species attended. News crews from multiple worlds filmed everything. Jake stood on a raised platform wearing a new suit that Lyra had insisted he needed. She stood beside him in her full military uniform, medals gleaming on her chest. Nira sat in the front row, waving excitedly at him. The station commander, a dignified alien with silver skin and 4 arms, spoke about courage and sacrifice, about how Jake had risked his life for a child of another species, about how his actions represented the best of what the galactic community could be. Then Lyra stepped forward to speak. The plaza fell silent. Everyone knew about her declaration, but few had heard her explain it directly. "When this human saved my daughter," Lyra said, her voice carrying across the plaza, "I declared him mine according to the ancient traditions of my people." Many of you heard those words and wondered what they meant. Some thought it was ownership. Others thought it was obligation. I am here to tell you it is neither and both. She turned to look at Jake, and her expression was open, vulnerable in a way that made Jake's chest tight. "Jake Morrison is mine because he gave me back my reason to live. He is mine because he showed me that compassion still exists in this galaxy. He is mine because when I was prepared to die with rage and grief, he reminded me that there are still people worth living for. And I am his because he accepts me, all of me despite our differences. I am his because my daughter loves him and trusts him. I am his because I choose to be." Lyra reached out and took Jake's hand. The gesture was simple but powerful. Cameras captured it from every angle. "The galactic community sees humans as weak," Lyra continued, "as fragile creatures barely worthy of notice. I tell you now that assessment is wrong. Humans are not weak. They are resilient. They are brave. They possess a capacity for selfless compassion that most species have lost. Jake Morrison represents what humanity can offer the galaxy, and it is extraordinary." The plaza erupted in applause. Some species cheered. Others made sounds of approval in their own way. Jake saw aliens of every type standing and showing respect. It was overwhelming. When the noise finally died down, the station commander asked Jake if he wanted to say anything. Jake hadn't prepared a speech. He wasn't good at public speaking, but he stepped forward anyway. "I'm not special," he said, his voice amplified across the plaza. "I'm just a cargo handler who did what felt right. But I've learned something these past few weeks. I've learned that doing what's right isn't always easy. It's not always safe. Sometimes it means putting yourself in danger. Sometimes it means accepting help when you'd rather stand alone. And sometimes it means opening your heart to someone completely different from you and trusting that the connection is real." He looked at Lyra, then down at Nira in the front row. Lyra said, "I'm hers." "She's right. But it goes both ways. She's mine too. Her and Nira both. They're my family now, chosen family, and I'll protect them the same way they've protected me. That's what family does. Species doesn't matter. Culture doesn't matter. What matters is that when someone needs help, you help them. When someone shows you kindness, you return it. That's not weakness. That's strength." The applause that followed was even louder than before. Jake stepped back, feeling his face flush with embarrassment. Lyra squeezed his hand, pride evident in her expression. After the ceremony, they were swarmed by well-wishers and media representatives. Questions came from every direction. How did humans and Velkari plan to navigate their cultural differences? Would this lead to more interspecies relationships? What message did Jake have for other humans working in space?